It is great to be with you all today. Very excited about this.
Great to have you. We can indeed. We can see you. We can hear you. And we're looking forward to a great session. Now, folks, we're actually going to do things slightly differently here. We're going to kick off by getting some polls, get you thinking, get you answering some questions. That's obviously going to feed Mike as he goes through his session. So we're going to go ahead and kick off with a few of these polls first and foremost. So please, please, please participate now. First poll question. It's a simple true or false answer or a yes or no answer. My company uses low-code integration tools. True or false? We're going to leave this poll up for about 30 seconds to allow as many people as possible to participate. Once again, my company uses low-code integration tools. True or false? Keep this going for another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, Mike, take note. Answers to poll number 1, 61% true, 39% false. All right. Poll number 2. My company's IT and businesses are aligned and consistently deliver applications on time and under budget to their end users. True or false? And once again, we'll leave this to run for another 5.
This is a really interesting question.
3. Yeah, it can open up a whole plethora of boxes. 2 and 1. There we go. So Mike, again, take note here. Everybody see the results. 54% say true, 46% say false. Interesting. Okay. And then the third and final poll we have for you folks. IT has all of the tooling and skill to handle all project requests when the business needs them. All project requests when the business needs them. True or false? Oh, okay, wow. All right. We'll let this run for another.
Oh, come on. Really?
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Yes, Mario, we are asking some tough questions, and this is quite shocking. 94% say false.
Wow.
90%. Incredible.
That's amazing. I don't think I've had this honest of a crew on any of the calls that I've been on. We must have some real technologists on the line. This is great.
Over to you to analyze and take it from here, sir.
Outstanding. Well, first of all, can you see my screen? It says multi-cloud apps with pragmatic pipelines and intelligent data services.
We cannot see your screen right now. So if you just want to go try that screen share again, please, sir.
I will indeed. Apologies, everybody. All right, let's see how it works this time around. How about now?
There you go. All good.
All right. Outstanding. And originally, well, first of all, let me start out by saying, Jason, thanks to you and the Sync team. Really appreciate being here today. This particular session is going to be a level set on our journey that answers a lot of the questions that were just raised in the poll, actually. And so what we want to talk about is, what it means to have multi-cloud applications, what even is an application these days. There's no standard definition of that. And I think, Mario, I saw some of your comments in the window, talking about fighting words between business and IT alignment. Having been in industry for roughly we're going on 25 years now, I definitely have seen some incongruencies between business and IT for quite some time. So yes, those are fighting words for sure. Seeing how aligned we are. One thing that, there's a lot of buzz around low code and low code tools in general. But one thing's for sure, there's a big changing landscape going on right now throughout IT. And we're going to tackle these multi-cloud apps today at a very high level. So that way we give a business and IT kind of a common ground to stand on, as well as some data services and basically a data pipeline. We're going to take a look at what that means as well. That'll lead us into another discussion. Let's see if the click is working now. Perfect. So we're going to level set there. We're going to talk about composite applications and then pragmatic data. And then I wanted to introduce some folks you'll be hearing from subsequent to this particular talk, the first three. Fran Paras, he's an advisory engineer at Boomi, and he'll be on a panel along with Pavel Kryla. Pavel goes by Paul as well. He is a technologist, recovering developer himself within and really focused on the finance space. Mike Kiersey, who just moved out of the office of the CTO, and now he's going to be running EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa systems engineering for Boomi. So congratulations to you, Mike Kiersey. But he's also he has a storied pedigree inside of banking and finance as well. He'll be sitting on the panel, and if all of those folks are not enough for you, I might be joining them as well. So I am the principal architect inside of the Office of the CTO for Boomi. My focus is on emerging tech and emerging markets, and I run our global operations for the Office of the CTO at Boomi. A little bit about us. Let's dive in because we have about half an hour to run through a lot of slides. I will say and reiterate right now, if you have questions, please put them in the chat window. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. And then certainly in the panel discussion subsequent to this conversation, we'll have a pretty focused discussion on banking and finance. For right now, I just want to level set everybody. I'm also going to turn off the video because Zoom is yelling at me that I'm having a few bandwidth issues here. So, well, you know what? Let me just stop this video and hopefully you can still see my screen without any problems whatsoever. Okay, if anybody can't, just speak up. All right, perfect. Okay, so let's talk about Boomi for a second. I want to focus on a couple of areas, and normally in my presentations, I get way away from marketing and focus instead on kind of technical subject matter that I think makes a lot of sense. So these are not really marketing slides. They're actually diagrams that we built internally in the Office of the CTO to help explain some things. And this one is going in a book I have coming out in a couple of weeks called Modern Enterprise Data Pipelines. And what Boomi consists of are two fundamental components. We have a cloud-based design time, and then we have a run anywhere runtime. So the design time is where the focus is going to be. In here, we have multiple modules that serve a variety of different functions. One, of course, is simple connection and integration. But integration means more than just connecting to different applications, which we're going to get into in a second. Integration to us means a lot more. In fact, integration platforms, we've coined this term iPaaS, integration platform as a service. That means more than just simply connecting one application to another, or even many applications to other applications. It also means putting in with it different transformative data services that allow you to connect different endpoints to a pipeline. And so integration, while at the core of all of that, relies on APIs and API management. So when I say that, we're exposing, creating, or managing APIs. We also have ways to deal with systems, that predominantly, started out in the 1960s, like EDI. That is a big part of e-commerce today and a part of digital transfers of data between one entity and another. These are all still important in any type of B2B environment. And so that is a part of our platform as well as the ability to have a modern inline master data hub solution where you have canonical examples of dictionaries and other ontologies that relate directly to the pipeline that you're typically subscribing to. A way to harmonize that data coming from one or many different resources and making sure all of those endpoints have in-sync data. And when I say modern, I mean modern. And the reason why is because oftentimes we tend to stick into one area of master data, this one centralized source. Well, you may need broader ways to deal with mastering data relative to a pipeline, as opposed to something that's going to be more of a batch process. And then also we have ways to discover, catalog, and prepare data for further refinement. So, in banking and finance, I know this talk isn't going to be about banking and finance per se, but one of the biggest areas that I've been consulting in recently is looking at different data sources, making sure those are compared against governance policies within the bank or within industry regulations and that sort of thing. And basically allowing data to be accessible in a certain way. Well, in order to make it accessible, you have to know where the data is and know all sorts of information about that particular data in the first place so that it can be piped accordingly to the appropriate consumers of that data. Well, we do this with data catalog and prep. All that is to say, this is part of what we call an integration platform as a service, iPaaS. And we coined this term almost 10 years ago. Really, it's been about 8 years. And there is a Gartner-defined strategy around iPaaS. Boomi invented it, and we've been a leader in this area for a very, very long time, since its inception. That said, this slide represents not all of the different capabilities of Boomi, but just a handful of them. And so when we connect to SaaS applications, on-premises applications, or customer-built applications in a cloud-native environment, this can all be done from a cloud-based design time with a deployable runtime that can run anywhere you need it. So whether you have the need to have all of your data, transacting with each other in the cloud, or if you need to make runs back through on premises, you can do all of that however you like in as few or as many runtimes as possible. And because we decouple the design time from the runtime, we really make the low-code design platform super simple for our users to use. And then you can run the runtime anywhere necessary and have as many or as few of those as you need for a number of given processes. All right, great. Let me go ahead and clear out my drawings, and then I'm going to continue. So that's just a little bit about Boomi. We can get into a lot more as we go, and I'm going to illustrate some stories as to why this is going to be relevant. So I mentioned before that applications have no real standard definition, and as a recovering computer scientist and data storage person myself, it's input and output are definitely a part of any type of application. And what an application is varies depending on who you talk to. But let's just, for the purpose of today, say that an application is going to take input from one source and give some output to be consumed elsewhere. Now, one area that we want to focus on is this. Number one, today, best of breed applications are popping up all over the place. If you look at CRM tools, HR tools, maintenance and support tools, these are just three big areas of where best of breed applications are really popping up all over the place. When you think about AI, when you think about blockchain, when you think about other emerging tech areas, even robotic process automation and all of the different components that make up that, these are areas that we think of as well. Well, those are all made up of best of breed components. And yes, they can be based in containers, or they can be as VMs. They could be running on bare metal. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is each one of these endpoints can be used in a specific way to where it becomes the best of breed today. I just read something about, for those of you who are in the AI space, one area that I'm interested in is natural language processing. And so GPT-3 happens to be one of the most advanced NLP engines there is. Well, I just read an article yesterday that China, I don't know what entity in China, but there's now an order of magnitude improvement off of GPT-3 in a new NLP AI model that comes from somewhere in China. Well, if this is true, how do you incorporate that into your particular NLP pipeline that you have as quickly as possible, or at least try to see how that works? Well, this is a best of breed type of application, right? And so the idea is if you're going to use a multi-cloud strategy, and if you're going to be able to bring in all of these different endpoints together and whatever their specialty is, you got to be able to quickly connect to those particular endpoints all together. So this is all to say that when we create an application in the Boomi space, a lot of web apps are created as composites. And that means there are components that can be located anywhere. that can be swapped out at any time, that can be connected to in every way possible, so that the flow of data can go from one to the next, and optimize your overall processes. That's what we mean by composite application. And again, a composite application is a subset of being an application in general, specifically a web-based application. Now, geographic requirements also dictate how composites are built as well. How you back up and recover your data can also be part of a composite endpoint or a set of composite endpoints. Fit for purpose, especially in banking and finance. This is an area where you can have different types of endpoints, services, different types of checks, security, that sort of thing. Those fit for purpose types of services can be incorporated into your overall application. Oh, and then avoiding lock-in. So you're going to hear lots of different infrastructure providers, especially, talk about lock-in. Go with one hypervisor versus another hypervisor or an on-premises service. See, with us in a multi-cloud application, the idea with Boomi is we're kind of like, I guess, Switzerland, if you will. We are very, I don't want to say, let's just say, your applications and your application components can run wherever they want to. Boomi is completely neutral on where we're going to connect and how we're going to connect to those applications. So if we're talking about legacy on-premises systems, needing to connect with modern SaaS applications, needing to connect to exposed services in a cloud-native way, that is something that Boomi is entirely built for. So, and that's what we think of as a full stack platform for iPaaS in general. Okay, great. So let's talk about some patterns for a second of a hybrid application. So the idea with these hybrid applications in general is whether you have 2 apps or services that you're running in your environment, or 20, 200, 2,000 or more different types of services that need to be connected together, it can become a mess really fast. And so the type of platform that's necessary to integrate all of these different endpoints is going to be one that gives you a variety of tools that allows for ease of speed from a developer standpoint, or from a from a design time standpoint. So in the world of modern cloud-based apps, one pattern that is necessary is that you're going to have developers not necessarily having a formal IT background. So this economy of skill, like in the question where we were asking the business and IT alignment, one of the biggest issues that I've noticed is that the business's desire for a way for an application to work doesn't necessarily comport with the way IT is able to build with the tools that they have. And so what we propose is saying, yes, we do not believe that any platform, any given platform has all tools necessary, but we would like to encompass as many tools as possible to make connecting to whatever endpoints, wherever they're located, as tenable as possible and as quick to deliver as possible. So the idea about bringing business and IT together hopefully would get you from 54-46 alignment, as what we saw in that poll, to something higher into the 70s and 80s of aligned business with IT. And then taking your tooling from 6%, saying that that's what you have all of the necessary tooling you need, to something that's, I would hope for an order of magnitude better, but let's be honest, if we can get up in the 20s or 30s, that would be a market improvement over where we're currently at. And the one thing that our customers repeatedly say is, one, Boomi, you have consistent tooling, you help us connect very quickly and easily, you're adaptive, you don't lock us in, you can tie into best of breed products, you have a variety of different technical and architectural patterns that you subscribe to, and you make our lives a lot easier. And that's why 98% of our customers who buy Boomi stick with us, because the platform provides many features of what they need for their integrative tooling. And so, and intelligent data services. And so that becomes important to this multi-cloud composite approach. And so when we have solutions that require, cloud to cloud based communication, and where you've got endpoints located all over the place. This is really where Boomi helps its customers shine. So, as we all know, if we've been in IT for a while, apps written in one language don't inherently talk to apps written in another language. For those of you in business, one of the things that I find when I consult with the business folks about stuff that just should be easy and should work out well, oftentimes what the business folks don't seem to understand is IT can do a lot. We all have the ability to code. We have the ability to create. We're good at our craft. The problem is we don't always have the tooling that's going to comport to what the governance policies are of the organization, or according to Conway's law, the organization reflects the IT tooling that it has, or vice versa. I'm taking liberties with the Conway's law there, but the idea is that sometimes the culture doesn't really empower IT and business to work together in the way that both want to. And I would say that IT is really undergoing a major overhaul, and business is becoming more technical and focused. The one thing to understand is apps don't talk to each other natively, and to make them talk to each other, it's getting easier, but it needs to be even easier still. And this is the type of platform that Boomi provides to our customers. One way is through APIs. API economy is something maybe you've heard of, and this makes it really easy to connect to different types of endpoints and unlock data. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of this particular slide, but the idea is when you have different types of application programming interfaces that allow developers of company A talk to company B, company B's data more easily, this is critical, but it's not the only pattern that's supported inside of Boomi. We have others as well. So let's take a simple example of trying to bring together multiple applications. And I know I'm moving pretty fast, and I'm just going to show you a couple of different representations of what Boomi has to offer. So let's take 6 common types of applications. We have an ERP application. We have a CRM application, an HR application, and we have a maintenance and support application as well. In fact, each one of these 4 named applications, they're all competing more and more for the same space, but they represent platforms of their own, and they're trying to get their customers on their platforms fully. The thing about Boomi is we want you to be on whatever platform is going to make sense to you, and to be able to interact with these other platforms in a way that's going to be quick and easy, or as quick and easy as possible. And so with that, whether you're integrating these 4 applications together, or with your own homegrown database on the left, or a cloud-based set of files, or another application that you are making in some other cloud, this is what we're talking about. Now, when you want to connect an HR and an ERP application together, or an HR and your local database, or an HR application with a CRM SaaS application, point-to-point connections, singletons are typical patterns that you would see developers using. And then they would create their pipelines and their connective sources. But what happens when you've got multiple processes that require different data sources and different data targets with different ontologies or different schemas that are incorporated with each one of these endpoints? It can become a mess. And for those of you who have ever done development or integration, you've got some experience, know what I'm talking about. And that said, this can become spaghetti code pretty quickly. Components that work for one particular process might be out of rev for another process and broken. There might be some deprecated code, not maintained. You can't really reuse the components all that well. It makes it really difficult to develop. And so that said, there's got to be a better way than this. So what happens if you were able instead to have a platform that could provide synchronization services? So you have some sort of master reference data within process that can look at all of your data sources and syncs within a process and synchronize them accordingly. And then you were able to have reusable components so that you didn't have different code for different processes. All of your code could be up to Rev. And you could even put an API around all of these different processes and services in such a way that you could expose that in a service catalog so that others could simply use that process as a part of their application build. And what you're doing is you're providing these, or you're using these tools to provide layers of abstraction to make coding go quicker for those who are actually developing apps, whether they're composites or not. And so having that mediation API allows you to be able to tackle both data and messaging. And then furthermore, if you wanted to put a front end on all of these backend processes, you could do that as well. So if you wanted human-based interaction, web forms, any type of approvals, feedback loops. I'm working on some right now on an AI problem that we're solving where we need human input to tell, without giving it away, to tell people where to go at a certain particular time. And so you could have some, like students, for instance, tell them where to go for class as an example. That's not what the example I'm thinking of is, but here you go. So you could have a full-fledged web application that's supposed to be an iPhone, which doesn't look like that as I'm looking at it on a blown up screen. But you could create a full front-end web application interactive in the Boomi platform, back-ended by the Boomi platform with all of those abstracted APIs that we were just talking about. So this is not a banking story, but it is a story about airlines. And when I know this last year has been tough, or year and a half has been tough on all of us. Normally I fly a bunch consulting and talking with customers and speaking at different places. But this last year, I haven't flown a lot. So I'm looking forward to flying again at some point. But if any of you has ever flown in the past, maybe you can relate to a canceled flight scenario. And so, you know, when you have a canceled flight, it's typically not a happy thing, especially if you don't have status on an airline. And if you're like most people around the world, you probably don't have status on an airline. And if you do, maybe somebody else has better status than you normally. But that said, let's assume for a second that we do not have any frequent flyer benefits on our airline. Well, if you have a canceled flight scenario, you're usually, you know, sort of last in line. And so when that canceled flight happens, if you wanted to go up to talk to a human at a kiosk, that would be a difficult undertaking. Or if you called into the airline to try to reschedule your flight, by the time you got through to somebody who could help you, you would have gone through a voice recognition system, the VoIP system itself. Customer service platform would then trigger the person to then have the ability to change your ticket. And by that time, you'd already missed your next flight out. So it can be a frustrating experience, especially knowing that the airline also has retail concierge platforms that they can work with, so that if you need lodging or food, you can get it. But since you're at the back of the line, it typically is a difficult undertaking. Forget about any type of remuneration or any type of payback. Airlines typically don't do that with passengers these days. And if you want a drink, to add insult to injury, the drink's on you. So airline's not paying for that either. So you're mad, you go to your social media feed and let your 1,338 friends know of your horrible experience that you're having. And just then you realize that, my bags were mishandled and they're taking a ride to a place that you're not. And this all stinks, but nevertheless, because the airline is not connected to the social media platform, they don't know that you're never going to fly with them again. And furthermore, they're going to send you a survey about how great your experience on their airline was. If any of you has ever gone through this, and I know I did, that's not a happy scenario. Or you can look at it a different way. You could look at it like, okay, canceled flight, not happy about that. But rather than waiting in line, what happens if you were to have an app and that app had a chatbot service, and that chatbot service acted as your personal concierge? And so when it was triggered on a state change of, your flight change happening, Your flight operations would then communicate directly with the chatbot service so that the chatbot could automatically update you to get out on the next flight. Talk to the ticketing system, and then get you out. And if it couldn't, then it could expose the API of the retail concierge platform so that you could at least get a meal if your flight was later in the day, or some lodging if your flight wasn't until tomorrow. And because you're saving the airline money by not having folks, wait in line as long at the kiosk or on the phone or what have you, then maybe you could get some form of remuneration on your next flight. Also, baggage systems are typically located in the airport. Exposing those APIs can be different and they vary from airport to airport. But if you were able to expose that API, the chatbot service could talk to it. And if your bags were taking a ride to some place that you had no business going or planned on going, well, at least you would know where they're at and it would all be communicated with you. So maybe you're not happy, but you're not mad either. Just frustrated maybe, but when you go out to the social media feed of your choice, instead of the airline not knowing what your state is, your personal wellness state is, it's reading your sentiment and then reporting that to the customer service platform so that when they send you a survey, it's not a tone deaf one and they're properly giving you or taking the input that you want to give them in real time. And yes, you'll fly them again. And maybe, just maybe, they'll pay for your drink on the next flight. All of that has to be architected well. And I'm going to wrap up in the next 10 minutes here. But let's talk about what that takes. These are all composite applications. Everything that we discussed before can be listening services to caching local data, to harmonizing data, to connecting to all of these different endpoints, to having an NLP or a set of NLP services for your chatbot application. We'll get into all of that. Having exposed APIs so that they can talk to each other as composite apps, and those composite apps are abstracted to talk to other applications themselves, creates a good logical framework for us to work from. So let's start out by setting up a source of truth as an example. One is being able to discover the different data sources that are out there, compare those different data source endpoints to each other through a dictionary. That dictionary would then harmonize all of the records to all of these different endpoints, and then take that clean filtered data, put it through a pipeline, and that pipeline would inform our chatbot services. So that way, if your chatbot was reliant upon NLPs in any hyperscaler, whether it's GCP, Azure, AWS, or anywhere else, it doesn't really make a difference. As long as that endpoint gets exposed in some way, we can work with it. And if the endpoint can't get exposed, there are other ways we can get there too. That said, once the chatbot service and the NLP pipelines are set up, and don't think this is easy. This is not trivial. It has to be well thought out, but at least the connection and the integration can be a lot simpler and faster. We can also simply and quickly connect to all of these different endpoints, and for each process, run a check through a data hub, expose, create, or manage API interactions with that particular process based on certain roles or attributes of the caller or the calling application, and then put a front end web application over the top of it that's browser based. That makes it simple and easy to be useful for whatever the scenario. And then this represents a variety of different data types flowing through a network. And whether we're talking about 2 applications, 20 applications, 2,000 or 20,000 applications, having a backbone of an event-driven architecture is typically something that helps. Now, we're not getting into what event-driven architecture is, other than full representation of massively scalable pipelines. For those of you who remember what an enterprise service bus is, back in the early 2000s, think of this massive bandwidth in the middle as your event-driven architecture, and think of Boomi as all of the on-ramps and off-ramps between the endpoints into and out of this type of architecture. And this event-driven architectural pattern, we're talking, can take on a whole bunch of different data types. 4 big ones are logs, metadata, byte stream data, as well as messaging. And so with all of that, what we're able to do is put together this really scalable and elastic way to create a way for all sorts of applications to be built. Now, you still have to think about your latency tolerance. You still have to think about where data is located and all of that. But this is the underlying engine that makes this all possible, regardless of industry. And so when we're talking about all of these different, when we're talking about, I love all of these animations. I forgot that I did these. Whether we're talking about AI, IoT, blockchain, 5G applications built on 5G networks, data management in general, or any type of emerging technology, any multi-cloud composite web application, Boomi can be at the heart of, can be an on-ramp or off-ramp too. And event-driven architectures are typically what's in between. And then we have a whole bunch of partner alliances with all sorts of emerging tech folks as well that can be super helpful. Okay, and this is a basic AI pipeline. We don't have time to go into this now, but the idea is this is the same strategy where we would basically have input and output into an AI pipeline as well. Almost done, just about 3 to 5 more minutes, and then we'll get on with it. When we talk about a multi-cloud fabric, again, Boomi relies on systems above the OS. So when we're talking about data integration, we are not talking about integration or infrastructure as code. We're talking about app layer and data layer. So anything that's built on top of an infrastructure, whether it's cloud-based, whether it's on-premises, or whether it's hybrid, Boomi is agnostic to any of that, or we can support any of those particular environments within or across your particular application landscape to form any type of composite you'd like. Now, our parent company at present is Dell Technologies. They do a good job of providing infrastructure and infrastructure services, as does our sister company VMware at present. Really where we fit in is in the data stack. And so from a pragmatic data strategy standpoint, this is nothing more than a conceptual framework of different pieces that we currently have inside of Boomi in our platform that we think can help our customers go fast. And one of the things that separates our strategy around integration platform as a service is a way to deal with all of the necessary components to move quickly in the design and rapidly on the deploy side of building application construction. And so when we think about all of this, we think about infrastructure. Again, we can be involved with cloud or multi-cloud, on-prem, hybrid, or any-to-any cloud. But really, where we start in the build process is in the design thinking. The first area that we focus is, what is the experience we want this integration to have? And we call that integrated experiences. So do we want something where the customer will feel, or the consumer of the data, or the consumer of the application will feel like she is immersed in this particular application? Is accessibility something we want to consider? Is reliability we want to consider? Whatever the experience is going to be at the top end, that is then governed by the business outcomes, and that's defined typically by the business itself. So with that, where Boomi fits in and helps IT and IT centers of excellence, like integration centers of excellence and data center centers of excellence, data management centers of excellence, is offering all sorts of tools that deal with the assembly, pattern, services, and controls layer. And Boomi, for a given process, we can provide ways to contextualize data, to then offer you an event-driven way, in pub/sub way, to deal with different endpoints talking to each other, to provide different transformative services on that data, whether or not you want a mapping from, say, JSON to SQL data, or you want to do any type of enrichment or filtering in your data. Those are all examples of data services that are provided. And then when you're providing access controls to everything as well, as part of your governance strategy, you may want role or attribute-based access. And these are all things that we're able to do inside of the tooling of Boomi itself. And so that said, in closing, really we are about integrated experiences. And so with that, we want to rethink what it means to build the scalable web application. And we want to rethink about what it means to have pragmatic data incorporated into that overall application build. And so if we know how to be better creators of our data resources, better ways and faster ways to abstract data so that it becomes useful to the consumers asking for it, then we can provide better user management, connectivity to anywhere, and we can really ready the data that we have and ready our applications, quite frankly, for whatever is to come. So that said, I'm going to stop there for today, and hopefully we land this ship, and we can get on with some questions, and then yeah, we'll go from there. Jason, I'll turn it back over to you.
That's it. Thanks very much, Mike. Well, thankfully we've had Fran, Mike, and Paul taking care of quite a lot of the questions in the chat box here as well, which has been fantastic. But we do still have some questions to cover here, so I'll jump straight into that and ask you to give us your opinion on the following. So Tanwir asks, what's your take on partitioned multi-cloud pattern?
Yeah, well, those are a lot of words, right? And they're going to mean different things to different people. Yeah, if we're talking about different types of endpoints located in a variety of different clouds, my take on that is it's especially if you don't have access to those particular endpoints, it becomes more difficult. Perhaps you can refine the question a little bit, and then we can address it. But in general, I'll say this. The things I like to think about regarding different endpoints within different clouds altogether. I mentioned it briefly during our talk, but latency is a killer for any application whatsoever. And when you have an application that consists of a number of different processes or a number of different processes that may be abstracted, it's really important to understand the dependencies of all of those different applications, because a half of a millisecond latency to one particular service may cause downstream effects on other services as well. You may not think that half a millisecond or 500 microsecond latency is going to be that important, but as it turns out, if you have a number of calls against that could affect the overall application, that could be bad. So especially if you don't have enough workers, especially if you're dealing with any type of geographic distance of note. So definitely latency plays a role. That's one area. Another one is permissions as well. Good logging will get you to root cause. One of the major limiting factors, I think, is in a multi-cloud stack is the inability of folks to think, or I shouldn't say inability, the folks not thinking through what the dependencies are and how to log that properly. That doesn't give good traceability. And so when you're creating a multi-cloud app, traceability can become a factor. So knowing how to do that well and sort of setting that up better, those seem to be the two things that, when you can manage your traceability better between endpoints and different areas or different parts of the application, and you know what their dependencies are, that really lifts a barrier on a lot of things. And then you can focus on things like, okay, how can I squeeze, how can I get this best of breed application closer to the data, and how can I limit latency altogether? So I'll say that.
Thank you very much. And we are over time, but we have an extremely engaged audience right now. So I do want to ask you one final question before we go and set up for the round table. Came in from Derek. What is your vision for the ultimate flexible, customizable, multi-cloud dashboard that unifies cloud offerings from major vendors and private cloud applications under a single pane of glass? ?
Great question. That's to be determined, but I'll say this. If you want the tools to build it, or if you want the out-of-the-box experience, that's a question that I would put back on you. If you want the tools to build that particular type of dashboard, I would say Boomi would be a good place to go for that sort of thing. Especially if you want a browser-based approach to that kind of dashboard and that kind of tooling. if you want an out-of-the-box SaaS app, which most do, unfortunately, I'm not going to give you my overall opinion right now, just because I would be promoting a SaaS-based vendor who's not involved with us today. But I would say there's probably a short list that you already have. Those would be the ones that I would consider. That was a very politically correct way to handle that, I think.
Well played.
If you want to build your own, though, I would encourage you to look at some of the offerings that we have. We make it nice and easy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Well, I don't think I need to really ask the audience to join me in a virtual round of applause. We're already getting a lot of plaudits in the chat feature there, but thank you very much, Mike. Great presentation, extremely informative, well delivered as well. And thank you again to the colleagues, the Boomi folks, for answering a lot of those questions in the chat. So that is but a precursor to